Hello and welcome to another interview. I have with me today Caroline Oceana Ryan, the author of the book Adventures in Belfast, Northern Irish Life After the Peace Agreement. And it's a pleasure to have her here with me today. Caroline, would you please introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yes, sure. I've been a writer since I was a little kid, and I've always read voraciously, and I love film as well. I've written poetry all my life. I've written plays. I produced two of them in Los Angeles in the 90s. I've lived in different cities. I studied acting and playwriting in London. I lived in New York for a long time. I've been very active as a community volunteer for many years, working with children. I'm a peace activist. I've worked as a copy editor and a freelance writer, and I've always loved Ireland. So I felt quite drawn to it.
Do you have any Irish ties?
Yes, I actually wasn't born with the surname of Ryan. When I was 39, I took my great grandmother's name of Ryan. It was just very important to me to do that. She had a child on a ship coming over to America named Oceana, and that's where I took my second name, Oceana, because she was named that because she was born at sea. And then Caroline is just a form of the name my mother gave me, Carol. Yeah, I am. You might say one quarter Irish. I guess is how a lot of Americans put it.
Now, you mentioned that you are a peace activist. Um, and there are many causes in the world, as you know, that certainly deserve attention. And what made you choose the Northern Ireland, the conflict?
I think because I always had a great love of Ireland and its people, its music, its traditions, amazed by how colorful its history has been, although painful at times. And I think I've always been very politically minded, and I studied intercultural education at Union Seminary. And I think that I was just fascinated to know how are these people creating peace in a place that's been divided between British and Irish for more than 300 years. And then after 30 years of the sort of the modern version of the Troubles, they set out to create peace. And I was just very curious to know how that was working out and what people's beliefs were and if they believed it was possible, to create peace after they'd lived with 30 years of bombs going off and shootings and people getting arrested and interrogated and, jailed without charge, held without charge for months, even years. So it's very hard to explain in a way because I was interested in going to Galway, but out of the blue, I thought, no, I need to go to Belfast.
And Belfast is the main city where actually the most of the events take place in the book. How was your interaction with the locals in researching this book project?
It was excellent. I mean, many people opened up to me about their lives, even the painful parts. But it was actually more fascinating than anything else. It was more fun than traumatic because they have an incredible sense of humor in the north of Ireland. And I really enjoyed that. And they just accept people. Once you're a friend there, it's sort of like being a family member almost anywhere else. And I really appreciated that. I really enjoyed that a great deal. So I found people were willing to be interviewed, and many, like journalists, politicians, writers, they were well used to being interviewed. It's just a place that draws writers to it, and a place that produces many fine writers.
How was the process? Did you find it difficult to research this particular topic? It's about a conflict, and sometimes it may be hard to get people to open up. But in this case, how did you find the process?
No, I found the process pretty easy actually because there's so much information on the conflict in print. And there's always someone willing to talk to you about it, even though I tended not to broach the subject. I didn't bring it up with people in general in conversation. I certainly did informal interviews, but they would volunteer a great deal, and you would see a great deal. You would see a lot of the attitudes. You'd see people closing down at certain times of year. Protestants get very much more self-protective, say during the marching season in summer. They get a little more self-enclosed in their culture. At certain times, people people from very openly political families, say with Republican ties, were very open about what they believed and how resentful they were of the British presence. So it was easy if I let it be easy. I let people tell me their stories. I certainly didn't try to pry open any private, feelings or memories that might have been painful. And then I read a ton of information, a ton of books.
Great. Could you share some of the stories that you felt touch you that you just had to include in the book?
Well, it's hard in a way to separate Northern thinking from the sort of the influence of Northern myth and music and theater and poetry. So for me, some of the greatest moments were watching Northern theater. Like I talk about the Marie Jones play, A Night in November. And that's about a Northern man who is Protestant, middle class, and comes face to face with his own feelings about his culture, that he sees how self-enclosed Protestantism can be. And I admit to my being subjective about that. I felt that as well. Some Protestants don't feel that way. I myself was raised Protestant, but I could see how self-enclosed they could be. And that play just brought out beautifully this sort of character change where he says it's like we're in a tiny room and we're afraid to open the windows and let fresh air in. I saw another amazing production by Geraldine Hughes, who's a wonderful actress who's done well in Hollywood as well, called Belfast Blues. And she sort of told her life story as a Catholic child growing up near the Falls Road, which is a very Irish Republican area. And, they had almost no money, and the father was perpetually unemployed, and he drank too much. But she manages to get out and to go to university in America. And there are parallel stories that I found in real life, which were in a way a little harder to write about because I felt like I was talking about people's personal lives. So I tended to use myth, I tended to use metaphors a lot. But there were times when people just opened up and told me, yeah, I was standing here when a bomb went off and all these British soldiers, their arms and legs went flying everywhere. There were moments like that. So stuff like that stands out. And then incredibly beautiful moments stand out where I'm seeing this sort of intercultural exchange, like Protestants being willing to learn the Irish language, or, Catholic people just welcoming in people from other areas, from Protestant areas, because, into their event or their party or whatever, because they're open-hearted. They just wanted to believe that way. And that sort of openness is becoming more and more typical.
Are there any similarities that you can make between the Irish culture and the U.S. culture that are notable?
Yeah, there are huge similarities. Our working styles are similar, except that they, I think, work a lot harder than most Americans and for a lot less money. It's kind of amazing. They have a very quick sense of humor. They're a bit like New Yorkers. Belfast is very energetic. It's got this raw energy to it. It's good fun that way. They love partying. They love any social event, any opportunity to have a party or just socialize. They love it. They love their storytelling. I mean, and there's a lot of strength that has developed in them out of feeling, I think, some feeling oppressed either by, say, the Irish Republican presence or by the British presence. I think that they've developed a lot of strength living in a place that's just full of opposition and conflict. It was, anyway, for so long. And in some ways, we've developed that, maybe like the World War II generation had that. And in some ways, having lived through the Iraq and Afghan wars, we have, my generation has kind of dealt with it, but, and Vietnam. But yeah, there are a lot of similarities. There are a lot of differences as well. And I kind of appreciated both in a way.
Right. Now, how was, in terms of writing and publishing, the book was published through Ascension Times?
Yeah, that's my little publishing house. I created my own for this. I went with a POD publisher to begin with, and I thought, why am I doing this? Why don't I just publish on my own? So that's what I'm doing. And I much prefer it now. That's what I've been doing since the second edition. And that's what I'll be doing with future books. I might try to traditionally publish at some point, but at the moment, I love having creative control. I love having editorial control. It's very important to hire proofreaders and editors. Even though I am an editor, there was still a lot that I missed. So I would say to anybody out there, if you've written anything, please get it professionally edited and proofread. I see a lot on the web that I can't quite believe, but it's
that seems to be a recurring message that I am encountering talking to different people, that sometimes you have to do what you know and let someone else edit your work. And I think that's a message that keeps coming again and again. Now, what is the message that, if any, that you'd like readers to take away from this book?
Oh, I think there's a big theme in it of just a renewal, of forgiveness, of releasing the past, of releasing bitterness and resentment before they eat you up alive, both on a personal level and on a cultural level. And I think that those themes kept coming up over and over again in the book. Friendship, just the beauty of some things like myth and poetry and music, which are just, so important in the Irish culture, North and South, and how kind of eternal they are.
Right. And what are some of the challenges that you run into during the publishing process?
Well, I mean, there's always a challenge to every writer, that you have to earn your way while you're doing your writing and your researching. And so I had 2 jobs for quite a while, and now I still do, because I'm promoting the book and I'm blogging and I'm writing another book, and with ideas for a third and fourth. So you just sort of live with that, you live with the fact that you've got at least 2 jobs. And I mean, I tell myself, at least I don't have kids to raise. There's writers out there with 3 or 4 jobs, because they've got children, they've got a day job, they've got the writing and the blogging. I mean, I don't know how they do that.
Now, where is the book available?
On Amazon. If you just do a search for Adventures in Belfast. It's available in print as well under the old title, which I have here actually. You can see it's sort of green, an old castle standing on a ford, which is a kind of a poetic title. The Irish for Belfast is Belfast, or Belfasta, which translates to an old castle standing on a ford. So that's why I chose that for the original title. But I really prefer the second title, Adventures in Belfast, because I feel it's a little more descriptive of what you're getting.
The book, I was going to say, the book itself, the title of the book doesn't do justice the content of the book, and I see why you included the subtitle, because there's a lot more to the book, and there's a lot more stories, and it gets a lot more personal.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing to point out. Now, is there anything else you would like to add?
Just that I hope that people will read it if they enjoy travel. I think they would really enjoy it. I think people who, for instance, if you like stories like what Frances Mays wrote, Under the Tuscan Sun, and I don't usually go around comparing it to books like Eat, Pray, Love, because that's quite a high standard, but it's in the mode of a woman who leaves her home and goes to another country, kind of looking for something, looking for some peace of mind, looking for something that will answer a huge question that she has in life, and maybe even looking for, a new relationship. And then other bigger issues unfold. And so it's definitely for people who love Ireland, and it's definitely for people who enjoy seeing a personal journey that they can relate to, I think.
Right. And who would be the target reader for the book?
Well, I think people who are interested in what goes on in the world, and maybe a little politically minded, maybe people who don't mind reading good stories, myth, legend, ghost stories, don't mind reading maybe a few personal stories as well, what I learned as a traveler and what I learned about myself. There's a few love stories in it, and there's some politics, but it's not totally taken over by politics. So I would say, people say 18, probably the 18 to 60 range, which is quite, well, maybe 25 to 55 might narrow it a little bit. But, you know, they could be from just about almost anywhere in the world, so long as they enjoy reading about somebody's adventures in another culture.
I know that you are a peace activist and you use to do a lot of writing. Was the transition from normal writing or traditional writing to actually writing a nonfiction book, was that an easy transition?
Because I trained as a journalist and I've done a lot. What was strange was writing about my own experiences in first person. And when you write poetry, the I isn't necessarily, if you say I in a poem, it's not necessarily you. So this was really, I really felt kind of exposed in a way. And so this was that was kind of strange. But as far as just writing about another culture's traditions and history and myth, none of that struck me as difficult. It was just fascinating.
That, I believe, wraps up our interview, unless you have any other insights or anything else to add.
No, that's perfect. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for joining. Again, the book is Adventures in Belfast, Northern Irish Life After the Peace Agreement. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, and please check it out. It's a great book. Thank you very much, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Oumar. I appreciate it.